Once upon a time, in the vast sun-drenched savannas of Africa, lived a giraffe named Gary. Now Gary was a magnificent creature, with a coat like a patchwork quilt of caramel and cream, and legs so long they looked like stilts. His neck was the longest, most elegant neck anyone had ever seen, reaching high into the leafy canopies of the acacia trees. From the ground to the tip of his ossicones, Gary was, without a doubt, the tallest giraffe in his herd, and maybe even the whole savannah. You might think Gary would be proud of his incredible height. The other giraffes certainly were. "Oh, Gary," they'd say, "you can see for miles. You must spot the juiciest leaves before anyone else." The zebras would look up in awe, and the little meerkats would stand on their tiptoes, just trying to see his face. But here's a secret, a big secret that Gary kept tucked away in his very large heart. Gary hated being tall. He didn't want to be magnificent. He wanted to be small. Every morning was a struggle. When he woke up, he had to be so careful not to knock his head on the low-hanging branches of his favorite sleeping tree. Drinking water was a whole ordeal, a clumsy, awkward splay of his front legs just to reach the waterhole, making him feel wobbly and ridiculous. While the other animals could huddle together during a cool evening, Gary felt like a lonely skyscraper, with the wind whistling past his ears. His biggest frustration, though, was playing hide-and-seek. It was his favorite game, but he was terrible at it. No matter where he hid, behind a giant baobab tree or a chunky rock formation, his long neck always gave him away. "Found you, Gary." The other young animals would giggle, pointing at his head peeking over the top. Gary would sigh, his long neck drooping with disappointment. He longed to be able to curl up behind a small bush like a gazelle, or disappear into the tall grass like a cheetah cub. He dreamed of being short. One day, Gary decided he'd had enough. He was going to find a way to become shorter. He'd heard whispers from the traveling parrots about a wise old tortoise named Solomon who lived at the edge of the savannah, near the misty mountains. They said Solomon knew the secrets of the earth and sky and could answer any question. With a determined flick of his tail, Gary set off on his quest. The journey was long. He walked past herds of wildebeest that parted like a great river around him. He saw elephants bathing in muddy pools, their small eyes watching him pass. After several days, he finally reached the misty mountains and found a small, quiet grove. There, basking on a warm, flat rock, was Solomon the tortoise. His shell was ancient, covered in patterns that looked like a map of the world. Gary approached cautiously. "Excuse me, wise Solomon," he said, his voice a nervous rumble. Solomon slowly opened one eye. "Well, well, well. A visitor from the sky," the tortoise said, his voice slow and gravelly like stones rolling downhill. "What brings a giant like you to my humble home?" Taking a deep breath, Gary poured out his heart. He told Solomon about the bumped heads, the clumsy drinking, and his terrible record at hide-and-seek. "I just want to be short," Gary finished, his voice trembling slightly. "Can you help me? Is there a magic spell or a special plan that can make me shrink?" Solomon listened patiently, not interrupting once. When Gary was done, the old tortoise was silent for a long time. Gary waited, his ears twitching with anticipation. Finally Solomon spoke. "Magic to make you shorter? I know of no such thing." "But," he said, holding up a wrinkled foot to stop Jerry's sigh of disappointment, "perhaps you are looking for the wrong kind of magic. Tell me, what would you do if you were short?" Gary hadn't really thought that far. "Well," he stammered, I could play hide-and-seek properly. I could hide anywhere." Solomon nodded slowly. "I see. Hiding is important to you. Why don't you try something? Instead of trying to change who you are, try changing how you see the world." He pointed a leathery foot towards the grove. "Look around you. This grove has many hiding places. Why don't you try to find one right now?" Gary looked around. It seemed impossible. He was a giant in a small grove. But he wanted to show the wise tortoise he was serious. He looked at a thick bush, too small. He looked at a fallen log, too low. Then his eyes fell upon a deep shadow cast by a cluster of huge ancient rocks. The shadow was long and dark. An idea sparked in his mind. It was a different kind of hiding. Carefully, Gary positioned himself so his entire body lined up perfectly within that dark shadow. He stood completely still, his patterned coat blending with the dappled light and dark patches of the rocks and ground. He wasn't behind something, he was a part of the scenery. Solomon chuckled softly. Now stay right there. The old tortoise ambled off, and a few minutes later, he returned with a few friends, a clever monkey named Milo and a sharp-eyed eagle named Kira. My friends, Solomon announced, there is a giraffe hiding in this grove. The first one to find him gets this juicy mango. Milo scrambled up trees, peering behind every leaf. Kira soared high above, her gaze scanning every inch of the ground. They searched and searched. 10 minutes passed. Milo was getting frustrated, and even Kira was circling with a puzzled look. Are you sure, Solomon? Kira called down. I can't see a thing. Jerry's heart was pounding with a new kind of excitement. He wasn't just hiding, he was invisible. Finally, Solomon called out, All right, Gary, you can come out now. Gary took one step out of the shadow into the sunlight. Milo gasped, and Kira let out a surprised squawk. You were there the whole time. Milo chattered. Your coat, it looked just like the rocks and shadows. That's the best hiding I've ever seen. Gary felt a warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with the sun. He hadn't shrunk an inch, but he had won at hide and seek. He looked at Solomon, his eyes full of gratitude. You were right, Gary said. The magic wasn't about changing my size. Solomon smiled a slow, wise smile. Your height is a part of you, Gary. It gives you a unique view of the world. But it doesn't have to define everything you do. Sometimes, the greatest strength comes from using what you have in a new way. Gary said his goodbyes and began his long walk home. But this time, the journey felt different. He noticed how his height allowed him to see the distant storm clouds, and he was able to warn a family of warthogs to find shelter. He spotted a patch of the sweetest, most tender acacia leaves at the very top of a tree, which he eagerly shared with the shorter giraffes in his herd when he returned. When the young animals asked for a game of hide-and-seek, Gary eagerly joined in. He didn't try to cram himself behind a bush. Instead, he used his newfound skill. He would stand beside a tall patchy tree, blending in perfectly. He would lie down in the tall yellow grass, his long neck looking just like a fallen branch. He became the undisputed champion of hide-and-seek. Gary, the tall giraffe, never wished to be short again. He learned that what he once saw as his biggest problem was actually his greatest gift. He just needed to look at it from a different perspective. And from his great height, he now had the best perspective of all. He was Gary, the tall, clever, and very happy giraffe. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories.